Last time I reviewed Wicked, I pulled a catfish and made y'all think in the thumbnail I painted myself green when I didn't for that review. And since I actually ended up really liking the first Wicked, I made a promise for the sequel I would do it. And I intend to keep that promise. Oh, I make witchin' look bitchin'. So Wicked for Good is the sequel to the long-awaited Wicked movie based off the famous Broadway play that is also a prequel tied to The Wizard of Oz. We follow Elphaba, now branded the Wicked Witch. She's on her journey to prove the wizard is a liar and set free the animals of Oz, while at the same time, a little girl from Kansas named Dorothy arrives, throwing an unexpected wrench into Elphaba's plans. And that's all. Pretty much any spoilers to you guys. This will be a spoiler-free review, so alright. When it comes to Wicked, you guys know with that first movie, had no interest in it. Nothing against The Wizard of Oz. I know that is a movie that was very important for film history. And from like the one time I saw it as a kid, I didn't hate the movie, but I wasn't crazy about it either. So it all made sense why whenever the Broadway play was taken off, Wicked also had no interest in it. But to my surprise, whenever I saw the first part of Wicked, I was Wicked pilled. I was like, dang, I should have gone green from the beginning. This is such a cool and interesting dive into not only the Oz universe, but its flipping perspectives of who the witch is and how she became that way. Ariana Grande as Galinda is not only great when it comes to the singing, but she was absolutely hilarious and one of my favorite parts of that first film. And so I ended part one going like, okay, I kind of get the gist of where this all connects into The Wizard of Oz and how it's a prequel. Do they really have much to tell in the second part? And that's when my real intrigue started peeking in, because I said that in my last review and people were just diving in. Oh, Chris, you have no idea. Things get crazy. Stories intersect, and wait till you find out who the Tin Man is, the Scarecrow. And I was like, oh, gosh, okay. This, honestly, it was looking like it was a Marvel movie. That's what it kind of felt like going in to Wicked Part 2, or Wicked for Good. Still not crazy about the title. It's the name of a song. Okay. But I was just so intrigued to see with how everything they've built up intersects with the Wizard of Oz story, how it changes the context of that movie, and I was like, all right, give it to me. Here we go. Part 2 should be all the good stuff. If I had a washcloth right now, I'd be wiping this makeup off, ripping these little nails that I can't imagine wiping with these. But I'd be balling all this up and throwing it in the trash, because Wicked for Good pissed me off. That's right. That's where the good girl Elphaba glasses coming off. Wicked Witch of the South coming your way. I know she's from the West, but this one from the South. Clock and tea time. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was not just kind of disappointed where everything ended up with Wicked for Good, but I am confused as heck, and nothing that I'm researching online is giving me the answers for the insane, befuddling ending that this movie has. That's where I think the real disconnect is going to be, and some people are just going to toss off my opinion on this review going, well, Chris, you're not even a big Wizard of Oz fan. You didn't even see the Broadway show. It makes no. That's not an excuse. Looking at this movie and the way it actually finally decides to intersect and connect everything into The Wizard of Oz, don't make sense. It just doesn't. And you can't say, well, the movie, the Broadway, and actually some of the book that the Broadway show has been. I got a lot to say about that. But look, I do want to be honest about some of the things I thought this movie did good. I will say for the first hour, I was still on board the same way I was in the first movie. I like seeing the repercussions of everything that we saw. Elphaba is now out there trying to do good and free the animals, but it keeps getting construed as she's a wicked witch and is only doing evil things. Something I was even also kind of like confused about is I was like, well, if Galinda and all these other characters went to high school with Elphaba and they know she really isn't this evil witch, how could they just play along with the wizard? And the beginning of the movie explains every character's motivation and why they wouldn't be so quick to get behind Elphaba's back. And I was like, oh, okay. Questions answered. I like this. Specifically, even when it came to Ariana Grande's Galinda, because I thought they gave her a really great moment where like she gets straight up asked point blank, how can you be doing this to who you're saying is supposedly your best friend, someone you hold love to? And they give this nuance to Galinda where she's like, well, why wouldn't I want this? Why wouldn't I want the whole Oz land to love me, to care for me, to treat me like this royalty? It's been my dream since I was a kid. That kind of love and attention, it's a little hard to turn away. I liked how straight and honest that was, because I was like, dude, these character motivations aren't making sense, but for some of them they were. Cynthia Erivo, I also think, is doing a great job. She's having to handle a lot more dramatic moments this time around because the tone does shift. It's not as lighthearted. You're going straight into everybody just hating her and her desperately just trying to expose the wizard. So, like, again, the first hour into this movie, I was like, it's doing what I wanted, exploring what I have, and then to me, where it falls apart and it really starts going off the rails is once Dorothy and all of that begins to come into play. That's honestly what I was most excited about with this movie. I was like, all right, I want to see these crazy connections, these like underlying things happening that we never thought about with the Wizard of Oz. How are you going to go about it? And the number one problem the movie has is it decides to rush through all of that goodness. It's so weird to say because the movie is 2 hours and 17 minutes long. At least that's the runtime I have here. And I feel like that's a lot of time for you to explore these connections and how the stories intersect. But I actually take it to the detriment of the movie and even the choices John M. Chu as a director makes to have much more of a focus on the musical aspects and trying to be so faithful to the Broadway show. It actually works against this story in movie form. I mentioned before, and this was a controversial take in my first review for Wicked, but I wasn't the biggest fans of the songs. Not to say all the songs were bad, they just wouldn't be something I'd listen to on my off time, and the same came for this second movie. There was a couple ones where, again, I was like vibing to it, I was like, that sounds fine, but not really something I'd listen to off my off time. Again with these songs, and it's not even just songs they brought in from the Broadway show, because I found out once I came home they added in a couple of songs that weren't there before, I'm assuming for Oscar purposes and to be nominated for Best Song. But these songs end up taking a lot of space that I think could be dedicated and fix a lot of the rushing issues in the later part of this movie. Because sometimes when a song comes on, while some of them do progress the story, because within the song there are story details or beats that kind of give insight into the character or their motivations, some of these songs just felt like they were entirely screeching the story to a halt. It got so much to that point where I was sitting in the theater going, man, if they could make a version of this movie where the musical numbers are pinched out and I can just continue with the storyline, because I am interested in the storyline they have, I feel like I'd have so much better time, which I know is messed up because it's a musical, but that's how much I felt again like the song numbers were taking away from the story. They also make such an interesting choice with Dorothy in making her kind of a shadow character. It definitely seems like Dorothy is so impactful to the story and the plot of this second part of Wicked, yet they make her this background character. I understand the story purpose for wanting to do that because these movies are not about Dorothy, but when her story and what she's doing in Oz is so crucial to what happens to Elphaba, other characters, and motivations, and you're treating her like she's an extra in the background roaming around, it was a really odd choice. I feel like it was such a missed opportunity to actually cast somebody notable or decent in the role of Dorothy and even make her this unknown villain in the film. Because for all intents and purposes and the things Dorothy does, she is kind of a villain for Elphaba, and how great would that have been to play into that? Somebody who doesn't even see themselves as a villain is just trying to get back to Kansas, but they have become a villain in this story, and I feel like the movie botched that. Like, there's one specific scene that I think made me the most mad that I don't want to give away for those who don't know, but I will say it's exactly the scene where Dorothy comes into the story involving a house falling. Okay, that stuff right there, immediately what happens after that, I think could have been a real crucial, big, dramatic, important scene, and it was played so weirdly. It was just played for laughs. It was played for giggles when I'm like, isn't this supposed to be like a turning point for Elphaba? Isn't this supposed to be a crucial thing that turns her into the way Dorothy would see her as the evil, wicked witch? And they botched that to me. And that just kept going to where the connections that they have to make, because it's the Wizard of Oz story where the Tin Man has to be here, the Scarecrow has to be here, characters have to end up in this certain plot point, because the way it is in the Wizard of Oz, it didn't naturally make sense within the Wicked story, and more like it just had to be forced that way because, this is technically a prequel to The Wizard of Oz, so we got to connect those beats. And that's, I think, what honestly really hurt it, is the tie-in stuff, is the things that they had to rush through to connect the dots to The Wizard of Oz. And there's honestly so much more that on the ride home I was thinking about that the movie reveals, because there's like a couple other twists and turns here that the movie reveals into the lore of Wicked and Elphaba that I was like, well, that doesn't make sense at all. And I actually went home online and Googled it because I'm like, they must have explained that in the play, in the book, or maybe in the Wizard of Oz movie. I didn't know. I'm finding Reddit threads that are like 10 years old, having watched the New York Broadway play, going, wait, if this happened, how come this happened? And then this occurred, why did that occur? And I felt like the movie had the opportunity to actually make some of that stuff make sense, take the liberty of adapting the source material and not just ripping it beat from the Broadway show, because that's what the Broadway show did, so we got to do it in the movie. That kind of hurt it. I'm beating around the bush here because I'm trying to be spoiler free, but it really is to the point that I'm considering doing a spoiler review because I just need to get it off my chest and have them really diehard Wicked fans try to explain it to me when I'm like, I don't think there is an explanation here, buddy. So look, all is to say, I was actually super intrigued and so fascinated with the way they've built out this world, the way they had all these characters, and even some of the underlying messages with animals and separating one another. Like, I thought all that stuff was so cool. But then what really brought down was having these forced tie-in connections that, like, again, was like making it feel like a Marvel movie that was having to force its characters in certain plot point directions because that's where things lead in the next film, The Wizard of Oz. But they don't actually work within the context of the story and everything you've set up. And if anything, at the end of this movie, I was left with so many unanswered questions, so many unsatisfying conclusions to a lot of characters. There's enough in here for me to understand why there's fans of this, but I can't believe it's that open-ended and messy. So when it comes to Wicked for Good, I'm going to give action 3 stars. It's not a very action-heavy driven movie. There's some cool scenes of Elphaba, you know, being a witch, riding on her broom, coming in and saving animals, but there's not much to that unless you count the musical numbers. Comedy in the movie, Ariana Grande is not as funny in this one as she was in the last one. It's more of a darker, serious tone, so I'm going to go 2.5 stars. Drama in the movie, I'm going to give it 3 stars, but I'm so tempted to go 2.5. I felt they had such a concrete, interesting expansion of the world in the first movie, and this one all got derailed by having to force itself to finally become what it is, a prequel / concurrent movie that follows the events of The Wizard of Oz, where a lot of that stuff just did not make sense. Suspense in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. After that first hour, my suspense and things that were happening was just going off the rails because they were just making such weird story directions. When it comes to 3Cs, I'm thinking it's gonna have to be casuals. I guess I can maybe bump it to cinephiles, and that's if I consider the cinephiles just the fans of the Broadway play and who have already accepted all the outcomes and story beats of this without logically thinking if it makes sense within the world that they've created. But because it follows the Broadway show to a T, it's perfect to them. So being honest, on Wicked for Good, as much as I wanted to embrace and love what this movie would become, I walked away pretty disappointed and feeling like they rushed through a lot of the interesting stuff this movie had to offer, making me suggest you wait to rent or stream it at home.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.
Again, that's just my opinion on the movie, guys. I don't think this video would do well at all, but I think I have to do a spoiler review just to get off my chest a lot of the weird things this movie does, and just because they happen in the Broadway play, I want to emphasize why it doesn't make sense in the movie world that they've created and set up. So look out for that if you're interested. But don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm the Wicked Witch. Take care.